All right, let's dive into a massive challenge that pretty much everyone in finance and accounting is facing right now. How do you find those really valuable, hidden patterns that are locked away inside your data?
Just stop and think about your own data for a second. Every single transaction, every customer, every line in the ledger. What if it's all telling you a story? A story about risk, about behavior, about some new opportunity that you just can't quite see yet? Because here's the thing, the most important insights, the real game changers, they're not just going to pop up in some standard report. They're subtle, they're complex, and honestly, the old ways of looking at data, they almost always miss them completely. And that gets us right to the heart of the problem. If you're a finance pro today, you are dealing with a staggering, just an absolutely enormous amount of data. And trying to make sense of it all can feel like a monumental task.
Yeah, this probably looks pretty familiar, right? We're talking millions of customer accounts, thousands upon thousands of general ledger lines, super complex loan portfolios, and just an endless stream of transaction data. But somewhere inside all this complexity, that's where the patterns we need to find are hiding. So how in the world do we find them? Well, the tool for this job is called cluster analysis. And put simply, it's just a technique that automatically groups similar things together. It helps you discover a structure in your data you didn't even know existed. Now, if you've been around data science at all, you've probably heard of a method called k-means. It's the go-to algorithm for so many people. But, and this is a big but, when it comes to financial data, it has some really serious fundamental flaws. And this slide just perfectly sums up the issue. See, k-means expects your data to fall into these neat, clean little round groups. But financial data is never, ever that clean. It's messy, it's skewed, different behaviors in customers constantly overlap. The expectation just doesn't line up with reality at all. So here's the real kicker. K-means literally forces your data into a shape it doesn't actually have. Just think about customer debt, for example. You might have one group that's a slow, steady grower, and another that's a new, fast-growing account. That pattern isn't a circle. It's more like a stretched out line. K-means completely misses that. And even worse, it forces every single data point into exactly one box, which is just not how the real world works. So, if k-means isn't the answer, what is? Well, let me introduce you to a much more powerful, more flexible approach, the Gaussian Mixture Model, or GMM for short. The whole idea behind GMM is incredibly powerful. It doesn't just assume your data comes from one single source. Instead, it assumes it's a mixture of a bunch of different populations, and each one has its own unique personality. So let's break down how GMM describes these different groups. The first component is super simple, the center, or the mean. This just tells us, where the middle of each group is. Now, the second component, this is where GMM really starts to blow k-means out of the water. It's the shape, or what's technically called covariance. See, GMM doesn't assume clusters have to be round. It can model them as stretched out ovals or ellipses. So remember that debt pattern we talked about, the slow grower versus the fast grower? GMM can actually see that elongated shape and identify it as a distinct trend that k-means would have just smushed into one meaningless blob. And the third piece of the puzzle is size, or weight. GMM gets that some groups might be huge, like your main customer base, while other groups might be really small but super important, like a tiny, high-risk segment you need to watch. So you put it all together, and here's what happens. GMM starts by guessing your data is a mix of several different groups. Then it uses some really clever math to figure out the unique center, shape, and size for every single one of them. And here is the absolute game changer. It doesn't force a customer into just one box. Instead, it gives you a probability. And this right here, this is the aha moment. A customer isn't just risky or not risky. They might have, say, a 60% chance of being in your core low-risk group, but also a 30% chance of belonging to a group that tends to pay off their loans early. This kind of nuance, this soft assignment, is absolutely perfect for things like sophisticated risk scoring and capital allocation. Okay, so that's the theory. Cool, right? But now let's get to the fun part and see how this actually works in the real world with applications that deliver some serious business value. So if you work in credit or manage a portfolio, this is absolutely huge. GMM can chew through your loan data and automatically find these natural segments, like a high-risk, high-rate group versus a stable long-term group.
This kind of insight directly informs things like IFRS 9 staging, stress testing, and even your pricing strategies.
Or, hey, think about expense management. GMM can scan spending across hundreds of different cost centers and find the hidden behavioral patterns. It can easily spot departments with steady, stable spending, those that have predictable quarterly spikes, and most importantly, it can flag those with highly irregular patterns that, probably need a closer look from internal audit. And that leads us right into fraud and anomaly detection. Because GMM understands all that nuance and probability, it's incredibly good at finding outliers that are way too subtle for a simple rule-based system to ever catch. We're talking about things like weird invoices, misleading journal entries, or those expense reports that just don't feel right.
So let's just bring this all home and make the final case for why GMM really is the superior choice for any kind of modern financial analysis. I mean, this table pretty much says it all. Where k-means is rigid and forces everything into circles, GMM is flexible. Where k-means gives you a hard all-or-nothing label, GMM gives you a realistic probability. And the bottom line? When you're dealing with the messy reality of financial data, GMM is just built for the job. K-means isn't. And I think this is the absolute perfect way to think about it. GMM isn't just running a calculation. It's like giving you a new lens, a new pair of glasses that lets you see the true underlying structure in your data. All the customer segments, the risk profiles, the hidden behaviors that were always there but were just completely invisible before. And ultimately, that's the whole point, isn't it? We need to move beyond just having tons of data. GMM is the kind of tool that actually transforms that raw data into genuine business insight, in truly actionable risk intelligence. So, I'll just leave you with this question. Once you have the power to actually see these hidden patterns in your own data, the subtle risks, the new customer trends, the weird operational anomalies, what's the very first thing you're going to do with that new knowledge?